nobody here because we holy over here. You know, and that's a lie. That we keep telling ourselves that's not true. It's not about our doctrine. It's about a lot of other stuff.
That's right.
All right, in addition to our doctrine. All right, and the doctrine is not the issue. If we believe our doctrine is biblically based, that shouldn't be repelling people because people are looking for truth. And what you'll find, as Stephanie said, the folks that are coming from they want structure. They want someone to show them how to live because they've lived a disorderly life for so long that they really gravitate to us because they assume we've got structure and that we can bring a sense of order to what is a chaotic life already. That's why they come to us. And when they come to us and figure out, hey, the doctor people jacked up as we are out there, that's what turns them away because they figure out this stuff that we're not what we say we're about. All right? So let's look at some of the reasons. We've been hurt. And the reality is, we don't do a good job of protecting. The church has got to become a safe place. A place that is safe. And you talk about this notion of bullying and the idea of abuse. And there's as much spiritual abuse going on as there is physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. You know, taking advantage of people, destroying self-esteem, destroying self-images. The church has got to become a safe place, a haven. You know, many of us are called refuge. What's a refuge biblically? Sanctuary, place of safety. And it was a place where people who were on the run went to. Moses established 6 cities of refuge on both sides of the Jordan, so that if you killed somebody and their family was hunting for you, as long as you stayed in the city of refuge, you were protected. So that means it's a place that if I have past issues, I should be able to come and be safe. And we have to really ask ourselves, is our church a safe place? If I come there, will I be safe? Will I be protected? Will somebody cover me? Or is it a place where I'm exposed and attacked, ridiculed, put down? So part of the reason is people are hurt. And you can't expect them to continue to go and be abused. Come here so I can black you out one more time. You know, I didn't beat you on the last time. Come back, let me beat you again. You know, we've got to change that culture. And I'm not talking about truth, because sometimes truth hurts. All right? But it's not designed for me to destroy you with truth. Pricking and stabbing are two different things. The word should prick you, but it shouldn't leave a mortal wound. It ought to bring you to Christ. Not say, oh God, you're going to hurt me again. I'm not coming back. Adult life, college, and church don't seem to mix. We talked about this thing that a few moments ago, that we have a culture that is much busier. And the nuance, most of us who grew up in church, our parents worked 8 to 3 jobs, 9 to 5 jobs. They got off in time to go home, feed us, shower, change. We'd all be church by 7:30. All right? We've got folks that drop the kids off at 6 a.m. in the morning before school daycare. They work 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 hours, go to a second job or go to school, or they, as Elder Hill said, traveling from place to place, ball games, activities, things of that nature. All right? And you know what? We didn't do that because we were condemned for doing that years ago. Couldn't play no ball. The devil's a lie. Didn't you see that demon floating that softball? You can't go. The devil plays soccer. Right? And so our whole lives were around the church. Now our folks have very diverse lives. And the church is just one of many things that they're trying to do. And the easy thing to say, you're just too busy to be saved. But in reality, there should be a balance in life. And the one thing that we did not necessarily have growing up was balance. All right, it tended to be that's what we did. Some of us, you know, that's all we did, and that was your recreation, your social, your educational. You got everything in the 4 walls of that congregation. All right, and the reality, some of it is that we didn't do that well enough for people, so they're now looking other places. And I think if the church has the resources and the personnel, we ought to be addressing a number of other issues so that we can give them those things in the context. We ought to have church league baseball and church league softball, and that should be a part of us, but most of us don't have the structures to create that yet. So we have to allow the fact that they're going to go other places to get what we're not able to provide. But it ought to be in our vision to provide that when we have the opportunity, even if it means partnering. And this is out of the box. You might have to partner with somebody that's doing it. All right? If the church down the street has a basketball team and they'll accept your folks, let them play. As opposed to, well, we got 3 guys, we're going to form a team, we're going to find 2 more to play. you know, create partnerships with other ministries to do some things that you can't do on your own. But we have to create that. There is no natural bridge to church. And what this statement is about is, do we have a way, how actively are we connecting with young adults? 75% of the people who don't go to church said they would go if somebody invited them. And don't respond to this, but I want you to think about the last time you invited somebody to church. The very last time. And if it's been more than a month, there's a problem. The research says that most of us are the most effective in evangelism in the first 3 years that we're saved. So if we've been saved longer than 3 years, we've become so immersed in the church culture, that's all we do. So even the invitation, inviting coworkers, friends, neighbors, people you meet, random folk you meet in the mall, we stopped doing it. And so there's a whole culture, and we have to get past the assumption that everybody does church. In this country, most people don't do church. But 75% would come to your church if somebody invited them. So does your church have a process whereby people are invited to ministry? Years ago, we would get out on Saturday afternoon with our little Be Born Again tracts, and start passing them out in the street. That's what we did. Every Saturday when I was in New York City, Refuge Temple, we got together, a group of us went out there, somewhere in the city, picked our place, and we passed out tracts. We'd sing, we'd shout, we'd preach on the corner. When was the last time you've been to a street service? Okay, we had a road service now for So the reality is, we haven't even become connected. And here's the other key. A lot of us who have resources perhaps have now said, let's do radio, let's do television. You do realize that you're only ministering to the church people. Because, the thugs aren't watching the Word Network. Okay, let's just be honest about it. We don't get on the Word Network. You're preaching to the faithful. As a result, we do more recycling of members than we do genuine evangelism. They get mad at this church, they saw you on TV, they come to your church. That's really what happens. Then they get mad at you, then they see somebody else on TV, and they going over there. All right? Because the faithful are the ones listening to the radio broadcast, watching on YouTube. Trust me, the straight up sinners ain't going on YouTube trying to find a preacher. All right? And I'm not knocking those methods of evangelism, but the research says only 2% of people are converted through those mediums. And that's the reality. 50% of people who are won to Christ are won through one-on-one direct contact. So half the people that come to Christ are won by somebody who takes the time to personally engage them in ministry. So we got to build that bridge. We talked about people being distracted. Young adults are skeptical. One of the things about this generation that we have to accept is that they accept very little at face value. So they walk in assuming it's a hype or it's a game. And so you have to spend a lot of time just winning trust and building confidence. And you do that through connectivity. Churches need to be engaged in genuine fellowship opportunities that are not always worship driven. Where people just get together. And see, we did this so naturally years ago. The Sunday afternoon in the kitchen. You had morning service, and you went to the fellowship hall, and you ate fried chicken. And you had fried chicken every Sunday, and you ate it every Sunday. All right? But what was happening was what? You were building relationships. I remember when we first moved from New York to North Carolina, we went to the church, and we spent a year, and we did fellowship through the radio broadcast. And we finally got somebody to take us to the church, and I'll never forget, the first Sunday we were there, the pastor sat down with us around a little table, and we had dinner. And I remember that. That was 39 years ago. But I remember the fact that he took the time to sit and talk to my mother, talk to my sister and I, and we had fellowship sitting around. And that was the beginning of us becoming a part of that congregation that I stayed for 20 years. But it started with dinner around the table. Most of our pastors come out of their office, preach, go back to their office. They don't take time to greet the congregation. And I've been guilty of that myself. You know, I changed something when we moved to our new location. And the Lord told me, get dressed, wear a robe on, and stand at the front door of the church and greet everybody as they come in. So while praise worship is going on, I'm at the front door of our church on Main Street, shaking hands. Greeting the visitors, greeting the saints, and I do that every Sunday.
Before you preach?
Before I preach. Because I know after the preach, Pastor, can I see you for a minute? So it's not going to happen after I preach. So I'm better off doing it before I preach, and they see me. Wow, the preacher's at the front door to say hello to the members. So I'm not saying everybody got to do it. That's my thing. And it's working for us. You know, because I had somebody say, I never in my life met the pastor at the front door greet people as they come into this church. Because that was easier for me, because after service, that's when everybody wants to see you for 5 minutes and they become 50-minute conversations with the saints. And so this time I get to greet the visitors, shake their hand, welcome them, tell them how glad I am to see them, greet returning people. And so I do that. You know, and that's a connectivity thing that we have to create. So somewhere in your ministry, you know, if you have, you know, what we typically do in our churches is we want to welcome all of our visitors. When I call your name, please stand. First of all, they don't want to stand. All right, because they don't want anybody to know they're a visitor. All right, they're trying their best to blend in. So you've now put the bullseye on them. You a visitor. You don't know Jesus. You're going to get saved before you leave this. So you already put it there. You put it out there like that. That's the first thing that happens. All right. Then they still haven't met anybody. All right, because nobody's shaking their hand. They came in and said, welcome. Here, fill out this card. And they fill out the little card. Thank you. And then they read their name out. And they usually mispronounce it. All right. And so on top of that, they still don't know who they are when the service is over. All right. And they walk away having not met anybody. All right. When you would probably do better, and I'll suggest this, to have a visitor's reception. You know, small room in the church, in the foyer, have a little gift bag with a CD of the service or a DVD of the service, bottle of water, some snacks, and welcome them and say, you know, we're so, and if the pastor, the first name, or assistant pastor is to stop by the desk and say, you know what, we're so glad you came today. You know, please tell me your name. And then pronounce it correctly. And then say, would you please come back? And then the other thing is the follow-up. What do we do with those cards? What do we do with those cards? And 3 things ought to happen. At least 2 of these 3 things. There should be a letter from the church thanking them for being there with the service schedule. There ought to be someone should get on the phone and call them or email them. We were so glad you came. Do you have any questions? And we really want you to come in. All right? And because if I'm thinking about where to go next Sunday, they were so nice to me at that church. I'm going back there. Amen. All right? These are just practical things we can do to begin connecting with people because people want to feel connection. You know, Bishop Wilkins shared this with me that they started doing this at Refuge Temple in Europe, that they make the altar call for those who want to be connected with Christ. But then they make a second call for those who want to be connected with the church. And if you want to be connected with Refuge Temple, come down front. He has people assigned to fill out a small sheet of paper, and then he actually calls them during the week, thanks them for coming, invites them to come back. All right, and for a church that large, they don't expect that. All right, so simple things you can do that can reconnect you with the people coming to your church is going to go a long ways. All right, young adults are exhausted, so we talked about this thing. We have to develop a way to how do you keep people engaged? Because here's the goal: is our goal church going or spiritual development? Okay, and I know that church going is a part of that, but I can grow if I'm not able to always be in church, if I'm connected with the ministry, and if I'm connected with support. How many people got saved in our churches that worked 6 days, 7 days, worked third shift, second shift, only they would come on Sunday morning? They didn't all backslide and go to hell. Some of y'all sitting here. All right? Amen. So what did you do that kept you connected? And how do we pass that on to young adults to say, look, you can't get here, but here's the Bible study lesson. You can't get here, but I want to encourage you to have a 30-minute prayer time every day with the Lord. You can't get here, but I want you to listen to the CD from Sunday morning. You know, it's those things. We tend to write off the people who can't be here. You know, but we'll take their tithes online. If you ain't here, pay your tithes online. Go to PayPal. I got a page. I ain't gonna lie. I got a page. All right? But we have to find ways to keep them connected with the ministry so that if they're not physically in the building, can we get them and help them grow spiritually? Some of it is, some of them just don't get it. And what I mean by that is there is a cadre of folks that really believe that they can be in a spiritual state and not be connected with ministry. Now, I will agree that it's not about church going, but I also know that you grow from your fellowship with other believers. All right? So how do we make that fellowship valuable? So, and this has a lot to do with how we deal with people. Because some people come to church because of the preacher. Some come because of his wife. Some come because of the choir. Sometimes it's one person they like. And they like this one person. And they go just to see Deacon Smith. Just to see Mother Jones. Just to see the youth leader. And so you win people. You know, Jesus is all about relationships. And sometimes we act like relationships don't matter, but they do matter. You know, I don't, if a stranger met me and said, come to my house and eat dinner, I'd be very leery. I've been seeing too much CSI and serial killers and and everything else. That if you just met me and said, would you come to my house and have dinner? I don't know you. You know, if you give me a plate, it's going in the back seat, from the back seat to the trash can. I don't know who this person is. They can have roaches in their house. I don't know who they are. All right. So you tend to eat better from people that you know. So part of it is building that relationship. This is very important. They don't want to be talked at anymore. And just throwing bricks from the pulpit or the Sunday school class or the missionary class or the youth class is not going to foster evangelism and spiritual growth. Amen. We've got to engage in general and relevant communication that connects people with God. This is the other piece. Christians are seen as hypocrites. That's a perception that we've got to overcome. And you don't overcome it, I'm going to be honest, by pretending that Christians don't have problems. And part of our persona has been that we are saved, sanctified, Holy Ghost filled, fire baptized. We're perfect. We have no flaws. All that's in my past. And so people come to church and they struggle with, can anybody in this building relate to where I am and who I am? And so that's the first thing. They feel inferior. Then when they discover how messed up some of us are, it completely destroys their confidence because they figured out, Lord, I went down to the courthouse to pay a traffic bill, and Deacon Jones was in handcuffs. My God. So now they're like, you know, what in the world happened? What in the world happened? You know, Mother Smith got the cussing in the restaurant because they didn't fry our fish right. What happened? And because we put this persona that we're perfect, it's destroying. And I'm not saying celebrate sin, but be real. There has to be a certain level of transparency. Scripture in James chapter 5 says, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another. That scripture means that if someone comes to you in confidence, sharing their issue, you don't sit there looking holier than thou. That's right. Everything you've been through is not testimony service, but there is a purpose behind everything you've been through, every experience, and there is value to be gained by you being transparent about those experiences. That's right. You know, I'm in the season right now where I do a lot of premarital counseling and marital counseling. Sometimes people aren't even members of our church. And, you know, one of the things I have to do for it to make sense is Charity and I are very transparent about some of the issues in our own relationship. Because we've been married 23 years and hadn't always been great. There have been struggles in our relationship. And we thank God for the grace to have lived through, survived, and overcome some things. But people coming in, you know, in marital distress don't need to hear you. You know what? We've just been walking in the kingdom. I mean, we've been fighting the kingdom. Fighting for the kingdom and everything else. Because we fail to be transparent. And then people are sitting there not connected. And the worst thing you can do is be in trouble and feel like there's nobody in this church that can relate to what I'm dealing with. You know, and the enemy will tell you, you must not be saved. What's wrong with you? Look at all these victorious people, and they all shouting, and they're white, and they jumping around, and look at you. You even wore the war colors of church. What's wrong with you? And that's what people deal with because we're not real. And then when they discover that we have issues, then we look horrible because we've been perpetrating something about us that is not accurate and not true.
That's right.
So we got to deal with that. The church seems to lack relevance. I told you, churches that are growing have made themselves relevant to their congregations. You got to think about the substance of what we teach, preach, testify to. Can I take what I hear on Sunday and live? Once I'm finished dancing, going in, can I take what I learned on Sunday and live? That's the relevance of the message that we preach. Jesus was always relevant. That's why he drew crowds. Because he was relevant in his approach to where people were. He talked about things that the Pharisees wouldn't talk about. Connected with things that they glossed over. And we have to create a relevance in what we do. You know, you ask yourself sometimes, why don't young adults come to church? Well, is what we talk about relevant to their lives? Because if it's not, and we tend to gloss over issues, and we ignore what they face every day, then, if I got to go out and get my own answers, why am I coming here? If nobody's talking about my stuff, then what's the purpose of me coming here and being faithful to hear? And that's why, sometimes the mega churches or whatever charismatic ministries tend to thrive because they will sometimes deal with issues that we seem afraid to talk about in our context. And we have to come to a place, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, where there are no taboos about what we do. The other point, nobody looks like them. My wife did something on Easter Sunday. And our church, our new location is in the heart of the city. We are three blocks from the homeless shelter. And we get a lot of traffic of folks just dropping in, coming by. And so this is Easter Sunday. And I went to church early. My wife walks in. She leads praise worship every Sunday. And she's wearing a white t-shirt, a blue jean skirt, white socks, and flip-flops.
My God.
And her head has got a little towel around her. And because I've been married for 23 years, I said, baby, it's good to see you. I didn't ask any questions because I knew there was something behind this madness that I was looking at Easter Sunday morning in my church. We did something called, and this is something I'll share, called cardboard testimonies. It's not our idea. We found it from a friend of ours, where as opposed to testimonies, we had people, we wrote on cards, for example, diagnosed with cancer, and they flipped it over, now cancer-free. All right? So instead of everybody talking, they just walked up and showed their card and flipped it over. And Charity's card said, I was going to get dressed up this morning. And then flipped over, but I realized, I thought about the least of these. And that was the reason behind what she wore. And we had about, one brother who's been incarcerated. Incarcerated, on the other side, it said, baptized, free, and working. And it was a powerful, nonverbal way to convey powerful testimonies that have taken place in our ministry. And I didn't even try. And we did it on Sunday morning. Took 5 minutes of the morning worship service. But it's a different way to connect with and to convey. And some of these people who, because of who they are, they would never testify anyway. They aren't talkers, But it was a way for them to share. And people learn stuff about them they did not know by these cardboard testimonies. All right? So, but the point is that we have to think about this. Very traditional church. I started something years ago in our church because I had somebody, when we were on Markham Street at our original building, that came over because her boyfriend had been diagnosed that he was going to die in 24 hours. And she said something told her to go into church and ask us to pray for him. So she walked in church in Sunday school. We stopped Sunday school, started praying for her. And we got through praying. I was walking her out. And I said, well, why don't you come over? You're right across the street, come to church. She said, preacher, I look at the way your people get out their cars, and I don't have those kind of clothes. And whether we acknowledge it or not, clothes send a very strong message about who's welcome. You know, some of you here, you even borrowed luggage to come because your luggage is usually grocery bags. And so I'm going to hide. I can't go to hide with Walmart bags. Can I borrow your suitcase? Because you got to go through that lobby. All right? And think about the people that come to your church or want to come to your church, but they see the hats, the heels, the suits, and they see that every Sunday. And so we started Dress Down Sunday, just monthly. You know, and I've got members who deliberately dress down, and not be disrespectful. They do it so that if someone comes that's not dressed up, they don't feel out of place. Because everybody's got a suit, and everybody's got a dress, and everybody's wearing a hat. And I'm not saying, you know, give up looking good on Sunday morning, but be considerate of the fact that, once again, you're trying to win an unchurched culture. All right? And think about this. There are now industries that there are people that make six figures that don't put on a necktie. Mm-hmm. They're just so good at what they do. They come to work in a t-shirt and jeans and get paid. You know, and we've got to be cognizant of that fact. And then there are people that just don't have it.
What about and it's been something that I've contemplated, thinking about and all that, because one of the members did come to me and I asked about, let's do a dress down Sunday. And, you know, well, Southern anyway, custom is you go to church, even if it's not suit and tie, slacks and church, you're not in what you went to the park in. And so even when if the whole church is in, I'm interested to see how it's going to work tonight. The whole congregation is in t-shirts and jeans, not jeans, shoes and everything. And your guests come in who didn't know it was dressed down Sunday, and they came in their suit. And wouldn't it operate the same reverse?
It had, because their church culture to figure out, and most churches now do some kind of dress down kind of occasion that I think they'd be okay. You know, I think, and see, what I got excited about was when people got Sundays mixed up. And you had half the folks dressed up, half the folks dressed down. And that's what church ought to be. That everybody just come as they are and be a part of the ministry. And that's really why I pushed it, was not so we'd all look the same. Because some of my seniors, they told me, Pastor, I ain't wearing no dress down stuff. I'm saved. I done gave up the word. I got to look saved. I'm like, well, you saved. Ain't nobody out there. I don't wear your suit. We ain't gonna struggle. We're not gonna struggle with that. You know, just don't aggravate nobody who's not dressed up.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, that's the main thing. And let me give you this story. Several years ago, we had a young man who came straight out of the game, got baptized, came out of the water speaking in tongues. All right? But he was still very much a gangbanger. Baggy pants, big shirt, red scarves. And one of the mothers met no harm. She is as sweet as can be. But she offered to buy him clothes. And he flipped. Because what's wrong with my clothes? That you got to buy me church clothes. She meant well, but that was a statement in so many words. Your clothes aren't acceptable here, so I'm going to buy you clothes that are acceptable. And we said that to people, meaning well, and then wonder why they didn't return. Because you just told them there's something wrong with you, so we're going to fix you up, and we're going to pay for it, but because there's something wrong.
But are you saying that, are we talking about, because there's a difference between visitors, folks that's visiting, or people that are connected to the ministry.
But he just got saved.
No, I'm just saying, that's my question. Because now, connection to the ministry, you know, we categorize churches traditional, non-traditional, and all of that. If you attend a traditional church and you're a leader for 10 years, come on, take the jeans off on Sunday morning. That's just my mindset. You know you go to a traditional church, and I think that some of it is we have to be mindful of our demographics, but we also have to be mindful of our church culture. And we're not changing and adjusting 100 years of foundation in 2 Sundays.
But let me ask the question. Is our church culture inspired? Is our church culture inspired?
Are you asking me that question?
I'm asking you. Because I think we have to separate what's inspired
I think that
from what is just comfortable for us.
I think that what has happened, and the reason why I have an issue with some of it, and God has dealt with me concerning it, is that everything has a classification. I have clothes, like your mother said, you got your school clothes, you got your play clothes, you got your church clothes. And we know we've moved from that era. But at the same time, the same ones that will rebel against having that structure, you will go to school and participate in everything they say, and it has structure. So is it inspiring? It may not. It sets a standard or it sets a tone. Is it necessary? Not necessarily. But if that is the culture of the house, to me, it's more so just disobedience and rebellion. Don't rebel. And I'm not talking about my 20-year-olds and 25. I'm talking about the 35-year-old that's probably my size, and you don't even put on the spaces. That's a whole nother subject. You know what I'm saying? So that's my thing. We lose it trying to make a statement, when in reality, where do you worship at? I tell you, I don't have a problem with you changing churches. If this ministry is not for you, just be saved. Know that you're going to heaven, that your soul is right. But if you attend someplace, like he said, he can't go to church. And the mothers is not going to be too pleased, but they're going to understand. I believe if they're spiritual enough, they'll understand. But I don't think that it needs to be, I have to totally change to adapt to everything, because at some point, there has to be a transformation on people coming in's part also.
And what I would say is, and I don't have any issue with anything you share. I think it is relevant. I think sometimes we go too far in our attempt to capture an audience. All right? What I'm saying is your atmosphere comfortable to anybody who wants to find Jesus? Okay? And that's the part that we've got to overcome. That if I'm looking for Jesus, have we put so many barriers between that person and Jesus? Whether it's the clothes, the length of the service, the cultural, there's a lot of stuff we do that is not evangelically sound. All right, you take somebody who was raised a Presbyterian, 55-minute service, and they come to visit you, and they're there for 3 hours. And then you wonder why they ain't coming back home. I'm like, come on. And see, in our culture, the longer the service, the more time we had. My God, we were there until 4 o'clock in the morning service. All the diabetics started falling out from food and everything, but we were praising God. Come on. We have to think about. We've got to really think about whether or not, and I'm going to give you a resource. It's from the UPCI website. And it's in their North American Missions tab. And it talks about impact survey. It is a long document, but it really forces you to look at your church based on impact. Is my church visitor friendly? Is my church convert friendly? And is it a friendly atmosphere that will allow people to come in and be saved? And they look at everything.
Bishop, you said it's UPC?
Yeah, upci.org is the website. And go to the North American Missions tab. And then there'll be several documents, and one of them is impact survey. And it really, it takes you from the parking lot to the benediction in your church. And gives you just a document to look at to say, are we creating a friendly atmosphere that fosters growth? And can people come and be invited? Do we have a process by which people are attracted? Do we have a follow-up ministry? How do we indoctrinate new members? It's a really good document that I've worked out for a number of years, trying to continually perfect what we do so that we are more effective in our evangelism. And you kind of lead us into the next question that I have. Are we building ministry or simply maintaining comfortable paradigms? And I would submit to you, if you get a chance, read Acts chapter 8. Acts chapter 8, Acts chapter 9. Because I believe sincerely that the Lord permitted the persecution to come against the church because they had gotten too comfortable in Jerusalem. They had gone there, 120, 3,000, 5,000. So in the minds of the apostles, we got this going on. We got a huge congregation of people, huge following. And so he releases Saul to attack the church because it made them run. And so Philip runs to Samaria, but would he have gone had it not been for that attack? He would have stayed where he was comfortable. And sometimes we stay in our paradigm because it's comfortable. There are churches I've heard them say, we like it small. We don't want anybody else to come in. They're going to disrupt the atmosphere if they come in this church.
Who do they have the service for? Just each other?
Thank you. That's it. That's it. They're doing it just for themselves. Because new people don't stand a chance there. You know, and they say, we just ran the devil up out of here. No, we ran the soul up out of here. But there are churches. I mean, you got to think about it. How's a church, why does a church stay at 10, 15, 20 and never grows? It's because they don't want to grow. Because to grow, you have to become a little bit uncomfortable with your paradigm. Because what do? You know, you got a church that's full of married couples, and in walks the project mama with 4 little bad kids. That are under the pews and over the side and, you know, screaming, Mama, he won't leave me alone. What do you do with them? I mean, and we are prepared to deal with those kids. You need to raise them children. God have mercy. The blood of Jesus. And we do all this stuff, and then we wonder why she don't come back anymore. Because we're not prepared to deal with that. When I was in revival at a Baptist church, first of the year, and that mama came to service, first night of revival. And her kids, they jumped the pews, they were under the floor. You know, I mean, they were just going off. And I thank God for Charity. Because Charity went back there. Because the woman was really trying to engage in the service, trying to hear the word. She was, and her kids were just all over the place. They were all over her. And she went and just, you know, not threatening, she became their friend. You know, the next day she went out and bought activity bags for each kid. You know, crayon, you know, some coloring book, something to keep every kid occupied, so their mother could enjoy the service and engage. And she said, look, if y'all are good, I got something in this bag for you. But you got to get through the service. And when the revival ended, the kids started crying because Charity was leaving and we were leaving. You know, it wasn't our church, but it was just a perfect example of nurturing the atmosphere so that those people had the opportunity to hear the word and be saved. And you're ministering to kids and the family at the same time, as opposed to, it don't make no sense. Everybody can't come here. It don't have to act they come here. And we don't say that, but we mean it. Yes, ma'am.
And we have to be cognizant of the needs of the individuals that come into our church. I remember just recently was sitting in a service and there was a child who has Alzheimer's in the service. And so he was a little noisy and the sister in front of me was like, turn to me. Should she take him out? I said, no. I said, he has Alzheimer's. Yeah, but she still need to take him out. I said, no, because if she tries to remove him, that's going to be more of a distraction than what he is doing. If you understand Alzheimer's, you know, no, that's not, you know, what you need to do and how you need to deal with it. So when I said that to her, the sister just turned on back around and never said anything else. But the point being, you have to know that you're going to have kids with ADHD, Alzheimer's, different other things coming into your congregation, and how you deal with those children are not going to be the same as the preacher's kid who, they have those issues. No, what I'm saying, they may not have those issues.
Well, you know, reality, and here's a question you have to ask yourself. And you have to, once again, look at the survey and look at yourself, look at the church, and say, is this a place where anybody, I'm not talking about people who want to be disrupted, but if they're trying to find Jesus, can we find a way to accommodate them so they can be in church? And that has to be something we think about. You know, I would urge you, if you have your own kids in church, you ought to think about children's church. Not because you want to remove them from the service, but they need a user-friendly way. And let's be honest, you know, even though it's a Sunday school workshop, Sunday school has now become the gathering of the elderly.
That's right.
Who goes to Sunday school in your church?
Most of the elderly.
My seniors are out there at 10:50, 9:50, waiting for Sunday school.
That's right.
All right? We have a sporadic children's class. they get there. They sometimes they're gonna, because they're young parents. Sunday morning is that, good Lord, first day I get to sleep, and if they make morning worship in time for the choir marching, they've done well. So who's coming to Sunday school in my church right now? Are my seniors. My adult class is huge in my church. They're there. And we're building our youth classes, but our strongest class is our adult class. But we have a dynamite children's church that is family friendly, that serves the family, and guess what? Our kids have gotten baptized as a result of children's church. My daughter got the Holy Ghost in children's church in our church. On a Sunday morning, I was in my office, and it used to be right across from my office, and I heard Geneva speaking in tongues. I said, oh my God, what's going on out here? And she got the Holy Ghost church. So it's a viable ministry, and it becomes a selling point. When you tell folks, we got children's church, you can drop your kids off, and we're going to take care of them for the morning service, so you can enjoy the worship and hear the word, and they're going to hear the word too, and it's user-friendly to them. We serve those kids a snack. They do a whole group activity. They do a small group activity. It's grown so large that we had to open up 2 classes to serve the children in our church now. Because, and once again, it's helping our families that are coming, and once again, they're new converts. They don't need the distraction of trying to keep their toddler occupied while they're trying to learn the word, because they just got to the church too. So it helps everybody. So if you have the capacity, think about it. Think about it if you have the capacity to do it, because it is a viable ministry.